for being here once again. I think a lot of people are wondering why we are having this hearing right now. And I think most people would think we should be talking about other things, except maybe President Trump. And I understand the chair's statements about wanting to move on FISA reform. I will point out the Republicans have been running the Senate for the last 4 years. They have their own internal disagreements on FISA. The president has been president for the last 4 years. And I haven't heard him talking about FISA reform repeatedly as one of his major priorities. I'm sure if he wanted to make this a major priority within your party, it could have gotten done. But instead, we are having this hearing right now. And I will get to Mr. Comey in a while. I'll note that he has appeared before this committee many times. If you look at all of these reports about what he did in his time in office, I don't agree with everything that he did, but I do know, as being his classmate in law school, I could call him anytime and ask him things. But I also know that he had the respect of a lot of people that worked for him. And so if I look at legacies, we all have mixed legacies. We all have things that we regret. We have things that we're proud of. But I know that one of his legacies was that he did have support for law enforcement. I know it from people in Minnesota. And I would note that he was fired. When were you fired, Mr. Comey?
May 9th of 2017.
And where were you when you found out that you were fired by the president?
In Los Angeles for a diversity recruiting event. I found out on television.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you went all around the country talking to law enforcement. Is that right, during your time as head of the FBI?
Yes.
And are you proud of the work that the people did in the FBI?
Enormously. It was one of the highlights of my entire life to be associated with them.
Thank you. So what I'm thinking as people watch this, not that many people are, but if they are, what they're thinking is, what are you guys doing? First of all, there is an election coming up in a few weeks. And as Senator Durbin has pointed out, there are a lot of concerns right now about Russia, not about what Mr. Comey was involved in that investigation years ago, but what's happening right now. We have Director Wray himself, the current FBI director appointed by President Trump, saying Russia is very active in the 2020 election, primarily through what we would call malign foreign influence in an attempt to undermine Joe Biden, to denigrate Vice President Biden. That's quote. Mueller, we know this, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 election and the Trump campaign knew about it. We know that we have Director Coates saying that Russia is the former Director Coates is the most aggressive foreign actor, no question. Quote from Coates, former senator here, the warning lights are blinking red again. And then we have the CIA World Intelligence Review. We assess that President Vladimir Putin and the senior-most Russian officials are aware of and probably directing Russia's influence operations aimed at denigrating the former U.S. vice president, supporting the U.S. president, and fueling public discord ahead of the U.S. election in November. So that's the hearing that we should be having right now. Or, as was pointed out by Senator Whitehouse, we could be having the hearing we were supposed to be having right now, which is the head of the antitrust division of the Justice Department and the head of the FTC. Well, we've got fraud going on during this pandemic. We could be asking them about innocent people being hurt. We could be asking them about, as Senator Whitehouse has pointed out, what in the world is going on over at the antitrust division, why they devoted so many resources to marijuana mergers. And we could be asking them the results of their tech investigations, which is now basically 20% of the stock market. Those are pretty important things. Or we could, instead of being here rehashing this of someone who is asking someone who is fired from their job by the president along with so many other people, we could be trying to figure out what we should be doing for the American people during this pandemic. 850 people a day, 850 people a day dying from the coronavirus. 800 businesses close every single day. But here we are rehashing this. So to me, if anyone watched that debate last night, since I believe that's why we're having this hearing, because we're just a few weeks out, we may as well be pretty blatant about it. If anyone watched the debate tonight and saw last night and saw the president in all of his heckling glory, I think what they saw was someone who is trying to undermine our elections, spreading falsehoods about voting by mail, when in fact so many people in this building and Republican governors across this country have said it's perfectly safe to vote by mail. Refusing to condemn white supremacy in front of the entire nation. That's not something you clean up the next day. All of this is done to wreak havoc right before an election. So that's what I think we should be talking about today, but instead we're here with you, Director Comey, so I will ask you some very quick questions. When you were FBI director, did you become aware at some point prior to the 2016 presidential election that Russia launched a sophisticated effort to disrupt and interfere in the US election?
Yes.
And as the FBI and intelligence agencies were learning about that threat, did you also become aware of efforts by the Russians to pass information to the Trump campaign that they believed would be helpful?
Yes.
Is it true that there were more than 120 contacts between the Trump campaign and individuals linked to Russia?
I think that's the number I recall from the Senate Intel report and the Mueller report, somewhere in that area.
Do you agree with the Trump administration intelligence officials that I just quoted, including your successor at the FBI that President Trump appointed, that Russia is emboldened and trying it again?
Yes, I accept what Chris Wray, the FBI director, said. He's a person of integrity, which makes his life difficult now, but the American people can trust him.
Does coordinating with a foreign power as part of a political campaign, especially a foreign adversary like Russia, pose a serious threat to our national security?
Yes.
And why do you think, since again, we have chosen to have this hearing literally weeks before the election, throwing aside all other subjects that we could be devoted to at the time, why do you think that nearly 500 national security experts, including former military leaders, have said that the current president has demonstrated that he is not equal to the enormous responsibilities of his office? Why do you think that Republicans, Democrats, and independents have said this?
Because those are people whose spine is a commitment to integrity, and they see an absolute absence of that with the current commander-in-chief, and it concerns all of them without regard to their politics, as it should.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Comey.
We'll